Greetings all, this is Peter Sko from Music is a Journey. Tonight's topic is Helix, and I've got a few different things to say about them. So let's start it off with a bit of an introduction about the band. In case you don't know who I'm talking about, Helix was a band, actually they still are. They appeared in the late 1970s, had a couple of independent releases, and then they got signed to Capitol for their third album. Their fourth album here, Walking the Razor's Edge, was released in 1984 and has their biggest ever song called Rock You, which is famous for starting off as "Gimme an R, R, O, O, C, C, K, K, what you got? Rock, and what you gonna do? Rock you." Now, that sounds like a really cheesy song, but it actually kind of really works. It's like, oh, come on, give me a break. And then it just gets into the song. It's actually a really cool, fun song. Like a really great concert type song. And actually, I'm going to throw in a little bit of trivia here that I just came across this evening. I was actually checking out the album Call of the Wild on YouTube, an album by Lee Aaron, who is a singer I'm going to talk about in an upcoming video. And there's a song on the album called Beat 'Em Up. And I thought that's curious because Blue Oyster Cult also have a song called Beat 'Em Up on the Club Ninja album. And both albums, Call of the Wild and Club Ninja, were released in 1985. So I checked out the song, and indeed it was the same song. And I was wondering, okay, now who covered whom? Because I know Blue Oyster Cult covered another Canadian duo, a couple of brothers by the last name Leggett. They covered one of their songs, White Flags, on the Club Ninja album. So I was kind of curious, and I checked out the Call of the Wild album on Wikipedia and found out that Beat 'Em Up is credited to a Halligan Jr., Bob Halligan Jr. Now, Bob Halligan Jr. actually wrote a lot of songs for hard rock and metal bands in the 80s, including Judas Priest's Take These Chains from Screaming for Vengeance, and Some Heads Are Gonna Roll from Defenders of the Faith. He also wrote a couple of songs for Blue Oyster Cult, including Beat 'Em Up, and wrote some songs for Kiss. There was also a band called Icon, which he wrote a lot of songs for, and Night of Crime or something like that was an album I had on cassette, and I remember one song from that I really liked. But anyway, Bob Halligan Jr. is also credited for writing Rock You, Helix's biggest ever song. Now, this album is also probably their biggest selling, best known album, Walking the Razor's Edge, and it is a really cool album. I really like it. Now, this was the only Helix album I had on CD for a long time. I had 4 albums on cassette in the 1980s. I actually got to meet the vocalist, Brian Vollmer, one time when he came to our local record store to do a meet and greet and signing and promotion of the album Wild in the Streets back in 1987. But anyway, there's Helix. Helix are a kind of Canadian institution type rock band. They've been around since, well, actually I think since 1974, first album 1979, and they're still out there. We'll get into their latest release a little bit later on. So I'm not going to go into the band in any great deep detail. I've already talked more about Bob Halligan Jr. than anybody else, but here's the first part of what I wanted to say about Helix. So I bought their third album and their first album on Capitol Records, No Rest for the Wicked. I bought this as the Rock Candy reissue, remastered and reloaded. It's supposed to be like really fantastic. There's an 8-page booklet inside with a 3,500 word essay and some photographs. And when I bought this, I was actually really disappointed with the sound quality. It sounded like the levels had just been way boosted up. There was a kind of scratchy sound behind some of the songs, especially in the ballad Never Want to Lose You, which is actually really a Scorpions type power ballad. But anyway, on that one there were times in the slower parts, I just heard this scratchy sound on there. And that actually, this one along with a couple of others, prompted me to make my Rock Candy video, which I did, I think it was last year, where I talked about all the Rock Candy releases I had, which I think is around 10 that I have. And probably about half of them are fine. I have no problems with them, but some of them have this kind of scratchy sounding quality to them, which I'm really disappointed with. So anyway, I always wanted to try to find a better version of this. And so recently I was watching Grant's Rock Warehouse, a channel which I've discovered in the fairly recent past. They did a whole series on April Wine, and they also did 3 videos on Helix, and they had Martin Popoff on the first one, which was about the 1980s output. And then they had this guy named Tim Durlington and one other guy, I forget his name now, but they were on the second and third one talking about the 90s and the 2000s and onward. And man, do those guys ever know about Helix. They have every single release ever and know, like, they've seen the band in concert so many times. They seem to know all about what's going on, who was producing the album, who was in the lineup for every single album. Pretty... Right, if you want to know anything about Helix, you got to watch Grant's Rock Warehouse, and especially the second and third episodes about Helix. You get so much detail. But anyway, that kind of got me interested in listening to the band, because I've always had a kind of soft spot for Helix because, you know, they're a Canadian hard rock band. But I never really deeply got into them because I can take this kind of hard rock, party rock, blues rock only so much. I really want a little more depth to my music. So I never deeply got into them, but I decided maybe I should, you know, check out a few things. So I decided I gotta get another version of this with a better sound quality. And, as it turns out, I found that there was Legends of Heavy Metal audiophile recording, remastered in high definition 96 hertz 24-bit. Now, I have no idea what 96 hertz 24-bit means, but I did recognize it because I got this Legends of Rock Blue Oyster Cult one for Spectres, and Mirrors was the very first one I got. And see, I always heard Mirrors was not really a very good album, but I got this version here and I thought it sounded great. And in fact, other Blue Oyster Cult albums I had did not sound as good. So I went and got the Legends of Rock one for Cultosaurus erectus, and this sounds fantastic, much better than the original version I had. The one for Fire of Unknown Origin, it's a different series, so but it's the same thing, 24-bit, 96 kilohertz. So these two albums, these two here, really got me to appreciate those albums by Blue Oyster Cult. This one sounds way better also than the one I had, and I really would like to pick up some of the other ones too, like, well, basically all of the first albums are available, just some are not easy to get. Anyway, I really liked that, so I thought, okay, well, I'm going to get this Helix one, and it was really tough to find, but I found it on, I think it was Yahoo Japan. Someone was just selling it, not auctioning it, but selling it. Little bit expensive, but I thought if I'm going to get better quality out of it, it's worth paying for. So I got it, brand new, sealed, and I listened to it the other day in comparison. Like, I played this album through and then this album through. And then I played like a song from here, 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 so I could really compare. I gotta say, I'm actually disappointed with both of these. This one sounds like it was remastered loud and has this kind of scratchiness to the music a bit, and especially that one ballad song is disappointing. This one just sounds like they just pushed the volume way up. That scratchiness that I feel is on the Rock Candy one is not on this one, but there's like distortion in the music because it is just so loud. I like to occasionally visit the dynamic range database and just check out what are the dynamic range ratings of different albums, and I had a strong suspicion that these two were not going to be rated very highly. However, they're not on the database. No one has put them in. Just the Walking the Razor's Edge, 3 different versions have been put in, and none of them are Rock Candy or this other one here, and they all rate fairly high. And again, I have to say, I'm quite satisfied with the sound quality on Walking the Razor's Edge. But yeah, this is just way too loud, and this is not particularly good either. Although I will say the ballad, Never Wanna Lose You, on this one does sound better. And I guess one other addition thing is that if I listen to this one or listen to this one, I notice the problems at first, but after a bit I can kind of ignore most of them. I do like the ballad sounding better on this one than this one here. So this was kind of a bit of a shock and disappointment. And there's one other thing to say, that the big song off this one here, Heavy Metal Love, actually appears on this compilation, which you see back here. And I thought, okay, well, let's listen to how it sounds on this one. So I listened to all 3 versions tonight, and the version on here is really atrocious. It just sounds bad. It's not loud, it's not distorted. I don't know what they did to try to clean it up, but it just just sounds like, I don't know, like the sound is just not very nice. It doesn't make me feel, these versions are better. So anyway, wow. I'm starting to just think that like the production on this for 1983 was really that kind of bright, loud, I don't know, like Def Leppard's Pyromania, if you compare it to the first Def Leppard album, On Through the Night, and then listen to Pyromania, there's a big difference. And it's that kind of like loud John Mutt Lang type of sound. And it was starting to become more popular after Def Leppard's Pyromania, but it looks like they tried to do it for this album here, and I think it doesn't matter which version I get, it's probably not going to sound pretty good. I suppose if I tracked down a version from the 1990s on CD, it might not at least be as loud, but I'm just starting to think that it's a problem with the original mix and mastering, the way it was done. It probably just doesn't sound all that great. And honestly, I never listened to the cassette all that much because I just liked the other album better, Walking the Razor's Edge. So yeah, kind of a disappointment there, but at least I can kind of anyway enjoy listening to it. But at the same time, when I ordered that one, I also ordered this one on this audiophile what is it, mastered in high definition for the third album on Capitol and fifth overall. This is Long Way to Heaven. And yeah, you bet your bones, it's just as loud as the other one. And the thing is that this album was actually not as... Basically, it shouldn't be as loud. There's a little bit more depth and texture to the music, a little more lightness in places, and more variety. And they've just pumped this through the roof too. Again, what we're hearing is not like any scratchiness, but just it's a bit distorted because it's just pumped up way too much, which was really disappointing. And of course, I had the option to get this on the Rock Candy label for cheaper, but I was worried that it might not sound good. And, believing that the audiophile recording or remastering was going to be that much better because the Blue Oyster Cult ones were so successful, I really had high hopes for this. But anyway, I can still enjoy listening to these albums. I just, feel they just sound loud. It's like you wish you could turn it down, but when you turn it down, just the volume goes down, but it still has that loud sound to it. So anyway, those are kind of a little bit disappointments there about those albums, and it's not like Helix albums are available so easily. Like they're four from the four with Columbia. They actually did 5 with Columbia. The 4 in the 1980s are the best-selling ones. They are the ones that are still available, but basically as a Rock Candy release, easiest ones to get. So a little bit more about Helix then. That was the kind of main thing I wanted to talk about. A little bit more. Helix, they had those 4 albums in the 1980s. Then they had one more with Capitol in 1990, which was called Back for Another Taste, and that was after a 3-year gap between releases from Wild in the Streets. And after that, let's see here, Brian Vollmer went to do a solo album, which, similar to Miles Goodwin of April Wine or David Coverdale of Whitesnake, they decided to do a solo album, and then the label said, no, we got to make it your band's album. And then what we got was April Wine, Forever for Now, which doesn't sound like an April Wine album. We got Whitesnake and David Coverdale, Restless Heart, which doesn't really sound like a Whitesnake album. And we got a Helix album called It's a Business Doing Pleasure, which I haven't heard, but I heard doesn't really sound like a Helix album. After that, Helix had gone through the last, through the 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and they've released a few new full-length regular albums. They've released some EPs. They had a half live, half studio album of new material. They had some compilations. They had one of B-sides. Quite a variety of things anyway. They had a lot of lineup changes. They actually had death of one member in a tour bus accident in the early 90s. There's just been a lot of shuffling around. Some of the older members have since returned to the band, and as with a lot of these older bands, the output starts to become a bit sparser and there's more compilations, but I would just want to mention a few other ones. So actually this compilation here, this is called Best of 1983-2012. This is actually a very good compilation because you would think that Best Of would focus, most of the songs would be from those 4 albums in the 80s. And actually there's only 1 song from each. And the rest of the songs come from other albums. Basically 1 or 2 songs per album, with the exception of, I think, 2 albums actually had 3 songs on. But what I like about this compilation is that it includes songs from, for example, the Half Live, Half Studio album. It includes some songs from the B-Sides compilation. It includes a song or 2 from some of the EPs. And it just covers, like, since there are so many releases out there of Helix stuff, they picked songs from pretty much all of them except for the Brian Vollmer solo album that became a Helix album. That's the only one that doesn't include anything. Now, actually, again, going back to that Grant's Rock Warehouse, the one guy, Tim Durlington, and the other fellow, I think his name was Michael somebody, they followed, like, they bought almost every release of Helix as it came out, even the ones that were available, like, only through the band's website. And in a way, it seems like Helix is a really fun band to collect because there are just so many places, like different releases, to get certain songs that you will only find on those releases, EPs and whatnot, right? So I am certainly not in a position to go out and start buying all these things now that they're, like, 20, 30 years old and really rare and hard to get. And I don't really want to either, but this compilation was really nice to be able to get a sample from all of those things. So that's a really great point about this one here. Just the mix on Heavy Metal Love does not sound that great, and I think one other track that I knew didn't sound as good as... I think this one here probably has the best sound quality of everything. But most of the other tracks on here I'm not familiar with, so first time listen, they sound fine. I heard that an album called Vagabond Bones from 2009, and this one here, Bastard of the Blues, from 2014. I heard these are very good albums. Anybody who's just getting into the band should check those out. Vagabond Bones is either super expensive to get, or I have to order it from, I think it's like Amazon in the US, and then the shipping is expensive. So I haven't gotten it yet. I might have to hold off on that. But I was able to find this one on Yahoo Auction, again, in Japan, Bastard of the Blues. And yeah, it's a Helix album. It is that, again, the kind of hard rock, solid rock, a little bit heavy at times. There is actually good variety on this compilation. I want to mention some of the songs actually do have some pretty heavy riffing in. So there's Helix's career, in spite of the fact that they kind of fall into this one category, they do actually cover a decent bit of variety. So that's cool. So that's Bastard of the Blues. And then the other one, when I just saw that, oh, Helix's latest release from 2021, Old School, was available, and I thought I should just snap it up now, because if I wait a year or two, it's going to be out of print and it's going to be hard to get. But I found out this Old School one, fun picture on the back of a teacher spanking a boy. This Old School album is actually a compilation of older songs. Like, Brian Vollmer was cleaning out and found all these old tapes from older songs, covering a span of the band's career, and some of them were in pretty poor condition. They had to do what they call tape baking, where they put them in an oven at a temperature, I think it's around like 50 degrees or something, and leave it in there, which is just to kind of dry out the tape and allow the chemicals on the tape to hopefully fall back into proper position. But anyway, it was tape baking. So that's what they had to do in order to get the sound quality as best as they could. So this is a compilation of a lot of various old songs that were never released on any of the albums. A lot of them were written by Paul Hackman, who was the person who died in the bus accident. So it's kind of a bit of a tribute. I think it's even dedicated to him. Tribute to him, dedicated to him. So there you go. That's what I had to say about Helix. And I don't think I'm going to say anything else, because that's the end of it. There are still a couple of albums, Vagabond Bones, I'd like to get. Back for Another Taste. There are 3 songs on this album. They sound pretty good. And probably that'll be about it. But yeah, Helix, one of those Canadian bands that almost kind of started to make their way into the US and then kind of lost the chance again. And they've just remained as a band that we are proud of at home. who are not really well known outside of the borders. So there you go. Anyway, do then check out Helix. Go ahead, check them out on YouTube or wherever you like to check out music when you just want to give them a listen. Check out the video for Rock You. It's just a kind of fun, 1984 heavy metal type video. And yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching, everyone. Got another video coming up shortly. See you in that one. Take care. Bye.